the essence of comedy is pointing at the truth. As an actor, you do have to tap into your emotions, but it shouldn't rule you.
You can't improve on the story of the gospel. So everything in some form or fashion has to be a telling of that story.
Now we're worshiping ourselves, which is probably, well, it is the worst thing ever to worship.
Yeah, and you say, I don't need Hollywood's permission to go out there and make a really good film. Encapsulating something in film or in a book or whatever way you tell that story, that's going to live forever. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. You know where you are, you know why you're here. You're here to be educated, inspired, motivated, to fall in love all over again and all those fancy things, emotions. That's what we're here to give you. Actually, we're not. We're here to just have a conversation and have some fun. And when we're done, you know your role. You're supposed to go to where podcasts are offered and leave a rating and review. 5 stars is what we deserve. And I really don't care what you say in the review, but do it, okay? It helps us more than you could ever imagine. This has been a fun little journey these last couple of episodes because I've been here in Dallas, sort of in the mothership for Mission Studios, and they've been gracious enough to set up this this studio and let me come in here and have some really, really great guests, some good friends. It's been a great opportunity because not everybody can make it down to Houston because they're lazy bastards. But that's okay. We took advantage of this opportunity of being in the DFW Metroplex, and this guy who's sitting across the table from me, he came by way of California from England, however you want to draw that map, and he's now in the DFW area. You've probably seen him before, and if you don't know that you have, trust me, you have. Matt Marsden. What's up, Matthew?
Hey. How you doing, dude?
Dude, I don't like how when I look at you, the way it makes me feel, okay? Let's get this homoerotic nonsense out of the way. Dave Rubin was just in here, and that's a pretty good-looking dude. And then you come around, Mr. Hollywood, you son of a bitch.
Maybe 20 years ago, but there's a lot of miles on
That's
this
not
right
true.
now. Yeah, it is.
Well, you got 37 kids.
38, actually. I had one in the last 5 minutes. So, yeah, I do have a lot of kids. And now I have a dog. I have a dog.
What kind of dog do you have?
It's a golden doodle.
Yeah.
Doodle, something like that, because it's a golden retriever and crossed
they're big
with
and
a golden.
soft and curly. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
They're
very
heavy.
cute, actually. Very cute.
Yeah, they are very cute. I have a border doodle.
Oh, you do?
She just looks at me like a person in a dog costume. She just has that look. She just stares at you like, fuck you doing? I like it. She just does. She gives me that look, you know? And I really think she's analyzing me. Does yours do that? Is yours just kind of stare?
Yeah, well, mine's kind of like got ADD right now because it's a puppy, and it's kind of like, But it, you know, when my wife brought in, she's like, I bought a dog because she grew up with dogs, right? And so my wife's all about making memories, which is amazing for the kids, right? So she said one of the biggest memories and the greatest memory she had as a kid was they had, her and her family had giant schnauzers. And she said, I really look back and I loved having dogs in my life. And so she wanted to give that experience to the kids. And so she came in with a dog, and I was like, I really tried to be angry at it because I know like who's going to be cleaning the poop up and all that. And it looked at me and I was like, I kind of love you.
It hit you.
Kind of love you already.
Now, your wife is from Malta, right?
Yeah.
She didn't want a Maltese?
She wanted a Maltese.
No?
Nobody has a Maltese in Malta. I don't know where that came from.
I don't know where that came from either.
No.
But I knew that wasn't connected to the little island.
Yeah.
The little island nation of Malta.
Yeah. I was just there.
Before we get into you, how did you meet a woman from Malta? Is that just what Hollywood people do?
So it was weird, actually. And it's funny because, you know, I think that most people, if they look at their lives, they can go back and trace like certain points where there was that kind of like, if you look at it like, you know, the really woke Disney timeline in the Marvel universe where it can split off, you know. So I look back at mine and I got offered a job. I actually got offered a job in Canada to do a movie. And I then got a call. I was literally going to get on the plane the next day and my agent goes, hang on a second, we've had an offer for this thing called Helen of Troy and it's shooting in Malta. And I was like, you know, because I was very naive then, I kind of listened to my agents and what they wanted. I said, what do you think I should do? And they said, we think you should take the Helen of Troy. So I go to Malta and I get bucked off a horse. So I'm learning, these are the cool things you get to learn to do when you're an actor, you know, like I got to learn how to ride bareback, even though I don't ride bareback at all in the film. But I got bucked off the horse, I landed badly, and they panicked, sent me to a physio. The physio then said, you need to do Pilates. And I was like, I
see where this story's going.
Bam, bam, bam,
boy,
bam.
Cue the music.
No, so he says, you got to go and do Pilates. And so I go to his Pilates instructor, and he was at Brit. And he was like, hey, dude, you got to meet this girl. She's a ballerina. She's gorgeous. I'm like, I'm not interested, you know, because I just got this big gig, and I'm focusing on my role. And he's like, yeah, but there's a party tonight in the hotel where you're staying. It was like totally like that. And I was like, yeah, I might come down, and I go downstairs, and there's this great party going on. It's actually a real big party island. I didn't know that. And literally people partied, and she was there, and I went,
yeah, that's
and
how
I was
it
like,
goes.
that's it. She's the one. And that was it. And so we've been married 19 years.
And 14 kids later.
Yeah.
How many kids do y'all have? Do you say?
No, I do. I have 9 kids. I have 1 from previous relationship, but I have 8 with my wife.
Let me just say, if I was married to either of you, I would also procreate. You're beautiful people. You've been a friend for a long time now.
Yeah.
And I'm always fascinated when I'm watching a movie or a TV show, and there's Matt Marsden. And I was like, what the hell? You tweeted something, posted something on X a couple of weeks ago where you were on an airplane and you said, the woman sitting next to me is watching Transformers.
Yeah, it was
and you
funny,
said, should I tell her?
Yeah.
Did you?
I did.
Did you point out that you were?
I did, because I mean, I wasn't going to do. I'm not that guy, right? I'm not the guy that goes.
And you
around
said
and goes,
that in the post. You said, "I'm not the guy to do this. I've never done this before."
Yeah, and but it's got to the point where, like, you know, we're the elder statesman now, right? It's not like when I was 25 or 30, you know. So this younger person, I mean, she was probably around 30 years old. She was watching it, maybe a little bit younger, and it was coming up to a part that I was in it, right? Like, it was. And I was like, you enjoy that? She's like, yeah. I went, yeah, that's me.
Did she do the double take?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
She totally did the double take. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you realize that it's actually kind of quite a fun thing to do for them.
Well, and it was probably cool for her.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, wow, that's because it gave her a story that she could tell.
Yeah, and back in the day, like when I first went to Hollywood before I was canceled, people would recognize me immediately when I got on the plane, right? So that's a different, you know, what it's like when people recognize you. It's like a different thing.
It actually just happened downstairs. Actually, this guy recognized we wanted to take a picture, which I was like, yeah, I got it. But back to your point about the plane, a couple of years ago, I got on a plane in DFW, and I was going to St. Louis, and I heard my voice coming 5 rows back. And I kind of peeked around, and someone was watching one of my videos on the plane out loud. That was surreal for me, but that's as close to weird as I've gotten, I think. Hey, guys, let's take a break in the show real quick. I want to tell you about my friends over at United Patriot Supply. You know, I'm a gun guy. I love my firearms. I love stockpiling my ammunition. I've got all the stuff out there, but sometimes you run into some things that are a little bit hard to find. That's when I turn to my good buddies over at UnitedPatriotSupply.com. They're not only my friends, they're partners with this show, and I'm proud to know them because they deliver. And let me tell you, when I say they deliver, if there's stuff out there you're looking for and you're having a hard time finding it, I guarantee you there's a very good chance they're going to have what you're looking for. So go out there and check them out, UnitedPatriotSupply.com. Right now, they got a deal going. When you buy a firearm, you can get up to 5 ounces of free silver with every order. So they got a silver incentive program because United Patriot Supply, they're also United Patriot Coin, and you've heard us talk about them as well. So you buy a firearm, you get silver with it. You get a free ounce of silver for every $500 you spend on guns. That's up to 5 free ounces. So you buy a $2,500 gun, guess what? You're going to get 5 pieces of silver. That's a pretty cool deal. So check it out. It's a combined promotion between United Patriot Supply and United Patriot Coin. And just get over there and get to know those guys. I tell you, you're going to love them, and they're going to be a regular stop and shop for you. So head over to UnitedPatriotSupply.com.
Yeah, it's never. I think people expect it to become normal. For me, it never became normal. It's always like you're watching somebody else. I mean, that's the way it should be as an actor. It's different, I guess, when you're doing stand-up, I think, in a way, or you're a personality.
I think it's a little bit of both. It depends.
Yeah.
Depends on the personality.
Yeah, but it never gets normal. I think it would be weird if it gets normal. And
I think you're weird if it gets normal.
Yeah. I was going to say maybe it's the person.
Because I don't think people are made to be famous. I don't think God created people to be famous.
No.
You get famous, but then you're not built that way.
Well, I think certainly when you look at acting. So for me, when I started out in acting, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to be on movies. I'd love to.
But you were doing a lot of TV in England.
Yeah, I started off. So if I go back to like, I'm an actor, let me talk about me.
Yeah.
But if I go back to the beginning, what it was really was I grew up in real poverty. Like, people over there go, oh, but when you realize
like
that,
Willy Wonka, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
yeah,
the
there were
grandparents
four
were all in the
people
same
in the bed. It was like weird. No, but I was
That's impoverished.
Yeah, I'm from what they call a council estate over there, which is kind of like the projects, really. And my mom was a single parent, and I never felt like I lacked anything because I had a lot of love, and I genuinely didn't feel like I lacked anything, and we were always very happy in our household. But I remember I watched Star Wars, and I just remember like it took me somewhere else, right? You know, I think when you get into the industry and when you get older, you forget the impression that those shows have and those movies have on young minds, right? Which is why Disney and all that are so evil.
So you sort of take it for granted because now you're behind the curtain, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, I mean, it's not right. We just get on with our day, and that's why when people get all wigged out about like seeing Chad, or you're like, I don't kind of understand that because you've gone past that moment. But I remember, so watching Star Wars and then watch Rocky, and when I watched Rocky, I was like, yeah, in America, you can be a nobody, and then you could win the heavyweight championship of the world if you work hard enough. And in my little brain, I was like, nobody's going to outwork me. They might be smarter than me, might be more talented than me, but I will never be outworked. So, and then it just turned out that I was really good at learning lines from a young age, and I was a voracious reader. So just, books. In fact, and it's funny when you look back at your life, right? As you get older, you start like reminiscing a little bit, looking back, and I read through the kids sections at my library, and I had to start taking out books from the adult section, not the adult section, but and so I was good at it. I was good at playing roles, and I was like, it'd be kind of cool if I could do this, but that's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. Like, I'm going to go and nobody in my family had ever gone to college. That was just like.
How many siblings did you have?
One.
Okay.
And so I had no idea which way my life was going to go. I did feel for a while I was going to go into the military, because that's where a lot of guys in the UK, they kind of default to, especially if you're from a little bit of a rougher background. You're like, well, I can handle myself, so maybe I should go into
They usually
the
draft the white trash first here,
yeah,
too.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So, and a lot of my friends did. But as it turns out, I auditioned for something called the National Youth Theatre and got in. I'm like, that's unheard of, like Daniel Craig went there, Derek Jacobi, all these like heavyweight actors. And that kind of helped me. It gave me kind of a stamp of quality, because over there in the UK, it's pretty much a nepotistic, elitist game if you're an actor.
I would think that's sort of a caste system where you are either born into it or you're not.
Yeah. So like, a bunch of the guys there, like, do you remember, is it Christopher Casanova? The guy from, he was the bad guy in Three Men and a Baby, like going back, like his son was there. He was a lovely guy, but it was kind of like that, like, the British kind of acting royalty, their kids would go there and then they go on, they do RADA and whatever. And I couldn't afford that. So I went and did a degree in performing arts, which I dropped out of before the end because I was making money. But I never really thought that I was going to make any money for it. I thought it was going to be community theatre. I loved it. I really loved becoming somebody else. And like I said, America kind of inspired me. And I thought in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe. And so when I started doing well and people started recognizing that whatever talent, I wouldn't say I'm talented, but whatever talent I had, I was like, Okay. And it's kind of like a filter system. So you go and you're like, okay, I'm going to do theater. Okay, I'm good at theater, so maybe I'll get into television. Oh, I got into television. Oh, okay, well, if I do well at television, and I did this massive show called Coronation Street, which 19 million people watched the show.
See, I don't know
night.
British television, but apparently there's some really big programming.
That was giant because there are only three. I mean, there were three, then there were 4 channels. So you didn't have all these different channels. So I think it was something crazy like 70% of the people watching television at that time frame, watched that show. So I went from being completely unknown to everybody knowing who I was like overnight. It was mental.
You're getting recognized on planes.
Oh,
and trains.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what happened.
Hey guys, just a few decades ago, private citizens used to be exactly that. They were private. But you know what changed? It was the internet. I want you to think about everything that you've browsed, everything you've searched for, everything you've watched or tweeted. Now imagine all that data being crawled through and collected and aggregated by data brokers into a permanent public record. Your record that is available for others to see. Your private life is exposed for people to just crawl right through it. And, this is something that, used to be only celebrities and people that everybody knew. They were the ones who worried about that kind of thing. But we're living in an era where everybody is online. Everyone is a public figure. And so when I keep my data private, I like to turn to ExpressVPN. Listen, they are one of the easiest ways for data brokers to track you is through your device's unique IP address. It's going to reveal the information about your location and everything about you. ExpressVPN is going to shut that down. They're going to make sure that your IP address is hidden, and it's going to make it much more difficult for data brokers to monitor, track, and monetize your private online activity. Listen, I'm online all the time. I'm also on airplanes and in hotels. I'm on Wi-Fi that's not secured. ExpressVPN is going to encrypt 100% of my network traffic and keep my data safe from hackers when I'm in public or on public Wi-Fi. So I want you to make sure that you get ExpressVPN. You get on the app, you hit one button, you are logged on, you are good to go, and you are protected. I want you to protect your online privacy today. Use expressvpn.com/Chad. That's EXPRESS VPN.com/Chad, and you get an extra 3 months free when you go to expressvpn.com/Chad. We'll be right back.
I used to go out every day. I'd come out the studio, and there were gates, and I'd go to the studio, I'd go and get my sandwich. And I didn't have a lot of money then, so I went up and get my sandwich and my Coke, and I'd walk back, and everyone was like, oh, let me see who the other people are, and they just passed me up. 3rd of March 1997, my birthday, was my first episode. The next day, the moron that I am, I walk out and I'm like, and they're like, ah!
Wow. People are finicky,
and I'm like,
it's wild how that works.
Overnight, insane. But so that was the first move, and then a few months later, I won the National Television Awards, which is huge at the Royal Albert Hall, and it was so fast for me, like my head was spinning. So I can relate on a smaller level to, what a lot of these people go through when they get it at a young age. But I never really thought that I'd get there. But then, you want to move to the next level, right? You want to.
You got to go to Hollywood.
I got to get in films. I got in a film with Michael Caine.
Michael Caine.
Hollywood.
Mike, okay.
Stop throwing those bloody spears at me. So I did the movie with him, and he was up for the Oscar for Side of House Rules. And I was getting all this heat. Like, I had managers, actually. It was kind of like, hey, kid, I'm coming over and I'm going to sign you up. You're going to be in the movies. And I had these people come over and they said, we want you to come to Hollywood. And then I came to Hollywood, and the first movie I got was Black Hawk Down.
Black Hawk Down.
And you're like...
Next thing you know, we're all falling out of a helicopter.
Yeah. It's crazy. So it was kind of fast. Never really expected it to be there, to get there. I really, really loved acting. I still do love acting. I don't like some sides of it now.
The shit around it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit. The first movie that I saw you in, that I knew I was seeing you in before I knew you, of course, personally, like the character that I remembered the most was Schoolboy in Rambo, right? You saved Sylvester Stallone's life at the end.
Yeah.
You're the sniper that takes the shot, and kind of a critical character. You were sort of like the moral compass of that team that was in that. You were the guy that still had a conscience.
Yeah.
And you lived.
Yeah, I mean, that was, again, coming from watching him as a kid, I mean, we all loved Stallone, right? To actually be in the room with him when we were having a conversation about whether or not I was playing this role. And originally, I was meant to take over the franchise from him, which was even more crazy.
They could have been making movies called Schoolboy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Because what he did was he actually did it with Creed later with the Rocky, because he was like, I can't carry on doing this. But it was an amazing experience being on that movie.
Where'd y'all shoot that? Where was the location?
In Thailand.
In Thailand.
Yeah. We used to get phone calls. They'd be like, I want to kill you. I kill you.
I kill you. Dang, dang, bang, bang.
I kill you. Because the Burmese didn't want us there.
Yeah.
It was really serious. But I mean, again, only in America could someone from England grow up watching Rocky, then come over to the United States and be in a movie and save Rambo's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think at that point, this, I mean, you've had a glittering career and you just think that that's just the way it's always going to be. And then you're going to work with somebody else and then with somebody else and then with somebody else. And unfortunately, I think, so when I first came to Hollywood, it was a really amazing time. Like the movies that were getting made there were just amazing. Gladiator was the year before we did Black Hawk Down. There was obviously Black Hawk Down.
And those were. I think people take it for granted, especially these days in the age of streaming, where it's straight to streaming and straight to rental. Nicolas Cage, for instance, and Bruce Willis before he got real sick, they were making these movies that didn't get released. They just went straight to Netflix or whatever it was. That era, to me, they were making big pictures.
Yeah.
And they had a story. It wasn't, let's retell this old thing. Let's make another Dukes of Hazzard type BS. They were telling real films. These were big films. I mean, Ridley Scott, you talk about Gladiator. It's a massive movie.
Yeah.
It's a massive movie. And I sort of miss that.
It used to be a time, going to the cinema was an event, right? You'd get excited. I remember, like The Matrix. Remember when The Matrix came out? I literally remember being in Burbank, and I'm like, this is wild, right? Because they made this down just around the street. I mean, I don't know if they actually with that. I don't know if they made it in New Zealand or whatever. But Warner Brothers is right down the street from where I was, and I'm like, this is crazy. I'm going in and watch this. I dreamt this my whole life of being in these rooms and doing these things. But it was, I can tell you from a material point of view, there was just an abundance of great stuff. And a lot of the time, I would say, I know it sounds silly, but when you are, for people that don't know this, when you are hot in Hollywood, you are the guy, you get thrown, everything gets thrown at you, right? Everything. And so you can afford to turn things down. I turned a lot of stuff down back then because, I'd done a movie with Michael Caine, came over, got Black Hawk Down. This is in 2001, came out, won 2 Oscars. I was getting inundated with work. Mm-hmm. So I could be picky because I'm like, okay, well, I've done it now. I'm there. I've come to Hollywood. I'm with the biggest agent in the world. I'm getting these movies. I don't need to take that. I don't need to take that. Until the point, when you say, okay, well, I've turned a lot down, and the ones that I really wanted, because a lot of times they'd come to you and they'd say, well, there's 2 of you up for this. And you'd be right down to the wire and it wouldn't go your way. And that's just the way, it goes. And sometimes it's to do with timing. Sometimes an actor will all of a sudden become available and they'll go, no, we're getting him because he's bigger. And it really is a lot of luck being in the right place at the right time. But I had a couple of instances where, for example, when I did Anacondas, I didn't want to do Anacondas. I really didn't like the first movie. I love Jon Voight. And what a lot of people don't realize is that movie, Anaconda, had J-Lo, Ice Cube, Jon Voight, Owen Wilson.
That snake ate some really popular people.
It ate some big people. So when they came to cast Anacondas, everybody wanted that role. Everybody wanted to be in that movie. And I was like, I don't want to do a snake movie. So I was actually lined up to do, I didn't want to do it. I was like,
mother.
So I was like, I don't want to do it. Like, why would I want to do that? And they were like, we're going to pay you to go to Fiji for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I got 2 others lined up after that. And then they didn't work out. I was testing for Superman and the Justice League and all these other things. And you think it's never going to go away, right? In your own little kind of naivety, I think. But there was a change. So if you think about cinema had been like the dominant, it's like the blue chip kind of in entertainment. Like, you want to make it to cinema. You never do television, right? Who wants to do television? That's like, if you think about it, a lot of the television actors that did very well, they went into movies and they never went back. You would never do TV. Mm-hmm. So I was doing movies. So I was like, I don't want to do TV. I'm going to stay in this world. But AMC came out with Breaking Bad. Right, and what was the other one? The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead.
And all of a sudden it was like, what is going on? Because that was kind of the purview of HBO and Showtime. They were like the 2 big ones. They would do stuff. And then AMC came out and did that. And then all of a sudden these cable TV companies were like, hang on a minute, we can make really good dramas. We can get good stuff. And so they paid a ton of money to have these actors go in and play in that. And that started the change. And then the advent of streaming. Mm-hmm. I remember being in a meeting where they go, yeah, eventually they're going to we're going to stream it into your house, right? As in, but it's going to be satellite beamed into your house. And people who have theaters in their house will be able to watch it. They didn't look at it like, we're going to have Netflix, right? I remember when Netflix started and, even Blockbuster, I think, were like, no, it's not going to work. So the focus completely changed. And so the movies actually it was weird because I remember when I got offered Anacondas, it was a $25 million movie. And I'd just come off Black Hawk Down, which was like an $80 million movie. And I was like, I don't want to do a $25 million movie. Because in your head...
Pitiful.
In your head,
this petty crap.
Yeah, you're like, I want to do Gladiator. I want to do these giant movies with these great... I want to do I want to work with Spielberg. You can't get a $25 million movie now. You can't find one. They're either $300 million or sub $5 million. So what happened is it just went, and they became big superhero movies because they make all the money.
Yeah, and now everybody's a CGI actor.
That's what it is. Everyone's got wearing those suits with the balls on them. But that kind of... I lived through that change, which was kind of weird, and also film actors going towards doing television with the advent of the amount of money that
it
Netflix... It
changed the whole thing.
It completely
I went
changed.
to the theater last week, first time in whenever. I don't even remember the last time I was in a theater. But I wanted to see the new Costner deal.
Oh, yeah, Horizon. Yeah.
And I spent 3 hours of my life alone in a theater to realize that I'm going to have to watch 6 more chapters of this. Basically, he's making a full-length feature film that's sort of like the streaming stuff. Because now people can binge watch an entire season of these little movies being streamed into your house. You catch the whole season, and then there's then you wait on the next season. He basically did this, and I think it's going to flop. I think it's a bad idea. You're going to spend $100 million to keep making these full-length feature films that by the time the next one comes out, everybody's kind of forgotten where we were at in part one. So it was beautiful. It was beautifully shot. I liked the way it was shot. I enjoyed seeing it on a big screen, but I won't go back for the next one, Because, again, I think that now seeing it on the big screen, I don't think they care anymore. I don't think they care anymore about the movie theater.
Well, the artists or people.
Just the production companies or whoever is making the buck off of it. I think that ultimately they want to get it to where it's mass produced in everybody's home, mass distributed in everybody's home. Am I wrong on that?
No.
If Gladiator, Gladiator, I want to see that on the big screen. 300, I'd like to see that on the big screen.
Yeah.
I don't need to go see. Which now, here's the thing, and you might have actually said this to me. It was profound. I think you did say this to me, that now every movie they make has to sell a toy.
Yeah.
Like everything has got to be, whether it's a superhero or it's a Pixar or a cartoon or the Troll Dolls or whatever the hell, all these kids movies that keep the Minions, Everything's got to sell a damn toy.
Well, that's. I mean, it's funny because if you look back when we were growing up and you had like He-Man. Right, do you remember He-Man? I mean, He-Man was actually, the cartoon was made to sell the toy, right? And they had to put, that's why they had to put that like, remember kids, you know, at the end, and this moral message at the end of it. But one of the reasons why they made a second Hulk movie, because the first Hulk movie, my friend was actually in that. I went to the premiere of that in Los Angeles.
The first one was that...
Eric Bana.
That was Eric Bana, right? And then the next one was Edward Norton. And then they did, was it Norton?
Was there someone else in between?
I think it was. I think it was because I remember the Eric Bana movie, and then there was.
It could have been Edward Norton.
But they kept trying Hulk movies. I remember that.
Yeah,
and nothing ever really stuck.
But the reason why they made a second one really is because they sold $1 billion of Hulk hands.
You know those little boxing gloves.
So yeah, I mean, it's like the Avengers movies sell lunchboxes. So. It's not just that part of it. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like the Marvel movies, I think that I was a big comic book fan growing up and I certainly wanted to see Captain America. I certainly wanted to see Spider-Man. But it became, they became complacent, I believe. And also there's the whole DEI hiring BS that, you know, which is just insane. But I think that for years and years and years, movies were seen as the pinnacle of art, really, if you think about it. Because you've got every element in it. You've got visuals, you've got story, you've got acting, you've got music.
The writing.
There's the technical, the writing. It's every aspect of it. So when that all comes together, it's... You know, it's like when you watch Storm Over Toledo or whatever for the first time and or Starry Night or whatever, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. When you see it in real life, you're like, I don't know how to deal with this, like why this is making me feel like this. And I think the movies used to do that, like finely crafted movies used to do that. And you just can't, okay, if you look at, for example, Spider-Man, let's just look at this. Look at Spider-Man. The poster of Spider-Man is Spider-Man, right? And you would have noticed this over the years, right? Spider-Man, and then you'd have one villain. And the next movie you'd have to have like Spider-Man plus two villains because one villain is not enough.
We know he can beat one villain.
You have to have two villains.
Let's throw more at him.
Yeah. And so in their brain, they're like, well, we did well with one, so let's put another one in. You're like, no, you can still do well with one villain. You've just got to write it well. Yeah, but another villain is more. Right? And so think about Avengers. The last Avengers poster had everybody on it.
Yeah.
It was everybody.
97 people.
It's like, yeah, you sit there and you're like, oh, okay. Now, when you look at Star Wars back in the day, Star Wars was an ensemble, right? You had the, you know, Luke Skywalker at the front, but, you know, that was an ensemble picture. But what they're trying to do, and it all comes back, in my opinion, it comes back to the accountants at the company going, well, we had Robert Downey Jr. in it, and we had Gwyneth Paltrow, and they go through all these box office people that have a dollar amount attached to them, so they feel more justified in their jobs. Because if it flops, then they'll go, well, but look, we had all these people, and these people mean this. And that. They're not looking at the story. They're not looking, I mean, we certainly know now with Star Wars is they're not looking at what people actually want.
No, what's the newest one, the gayest one they've ever done?
Oh, the Acolyte. I mean, it's
I mean, Star
appalling.
Wars has always been reasonably gay. Let's be fair.
Just a little bit.
It's always been a reasonably gay little fairy tale.
With a little bit of incest in there.
With some incest, and they really pushed the envelope on some things that they had going on. There was. Now they're out and out saying this is the gayest Star Wars yet.
And nobody's watching it.
Nobody wants to see that
because nobody wants to see it.
It's just like with the Marvel movies and the Avengers, then they get all woke with the Captain Marvel. They make it a woman. She's woke in real life, and they all translates onto the screen. Nobody wants to see this garbage. Have you ever seen her feet?
No.
What's that
actress's name? She got jacked up feet.
Brie Larson. Google Brie Larson's feet. You will never be the same.
Listen,
it's
never
the most
trust.
disgusting shit you've ever seen. She was a professional dancer, so I'm going to give it to her.
Okay.
But I mean, this girl is gnarled up. Jake's over there doing it right now. I guarantee you he's Googling
I want to see it. Never trust anyone that's named after a cheese.
No, because you know what? Their feet stink.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you guys, maybe the producers could toss up Brie Larson's. I guarantee you, as you're typing it, and I think she's a pretty girl, it will auto-populate to feed.
There's a great interview with her. I can't remember who it's on one of the late night shows, and she's completely like charming.
Look at that. Look at that. For those of you listening by audio, Matt Marsden's ready to vomit in his mouth.
I'm going to tell you, my wife was a professional dancer, and she doesn't have feet like that.
My daughter is a professional dancer, and she doesn't have feet like that.
Hey, but look, I mean, she's a good-looking girl. I just think that, she came over obnoxious. I think that, and look, I think she's talented as well. I think she's a good actress. I know a lot of people like to hate on her.
Do you?
But
I
do think she's good. I mean, I think she's terrible in Captain Marvel. I think it's a really...
Well, they made a woke movie.
It's horrible.
And I hated at the end of the Avengers deal where they're having the big fight in Wakanda, and all of a sudden the dudes are kind of getting knocked out of the fight, and they have that one scene where all the women put on their little "we're about to beat your ass" pose. And I was like, I was watching that, I think, in the theater, and I go, horse shit. It was my visceral reaction to this thing. I was like, see, I know what you're doing right now, and that sucks. It's terrible.
But look, I mean, it's like, when you watch Top Gun, I watched Top Gun Maverick. Nobody cares it's a multiracial cast. Nobody cares.
Didn't even think about it.
I did. Same. I watched, I have to say, I watched the new Beverly Hills Cop the other day. Same thing.
There's a new one?
I didn't care. Yeah. It makes you realize as well, how absolutely brilliant Eddie Murphy is.
I think I saw something was happening with that. Who's in it?
It's Eddie Murphy, obviously. He's got the Judge Reinhold is his name,
Judge Reinhold,
I think. Yeah. And the other guy, the two cops, I can't remember the other guy's name. And then it's got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's brilliant.
He's a great actor.
And there's a girl called, I think her name's Taylor Page, I think it is.
Could be. I don't know.
And I love her as well. I mean, she's gorgeous. And but again, she's mixed race, I think, or black. And who cares? Nobody cares.
So this is out? This movie's out?
Yeah, it's out. I loved it. I mean, I enjoyed it. And look, I don't know if you were the same. I watched Beverly Hills Cop, the first one, 1,000 times. I loved it. Hey, man.
Yeah.
You're a banana in the tailpipe.
So that
bit.
Makes
It's
sense
just
now,
great.
I know that, I see the clips from Rich Eisen's podcast where he's got all these celebrities on there, and he was interviewing Judge Reinhold, who I had not thought about in 20 years. And that makes sense why he had him on there. And he was telling stories about when Bronson Pinchot was playing the art gallery guy. And he goes, and nobody expected that character to come out of him. None of them, even Eddie was cracking up when he was doing it because the director was like, listen, I'm not even going to tell you how this is going to go. Just go with it. And he's like doing that art gallery
he's amazing.
And just blew it out of the water.
That is I remember watching Steve Carell on Bruce Almighty.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Star is Born.
Yeah.
When he did that.
Yeah. Those guys that are able to turn themselves into a cartoon.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
But he was like, Serge, my name is Serge.
Serge.
And he goes, no, it's good. He's got a little bit of lemon. It's nice. He does it again. He reprises it. Yeah. So you should watch. And he's fantastic in it. And I just remember watching Eddie Murphy back in the day. And again, I didn't care that he was black. Nobody cared that he was black.
Never crossed my mind.
He was just amazing.
Did you look that girl up, Jake? I mean, not her feet. JD, did you look up the girl from Beverly Hills? Is Beverly Hills Cop 4?
No, I think it's called Axel F.
Axel F. That's what it's called.
Dude, and it opens up, and it's the
Taylor
heat
Page.
And she's gorgeous.
That is her name. She is gorgeous.
And they do The Heat Is On, and I'm like, I'm in. I am totally in right now.
Born at she's
but
33 years old.
Chad, here's the thing. What has happened in Hollywood is we have, if you look back at the writers of yesteryear, right, so the screenwriters, they'd all be like alcoholics, messed up, they'd be writing and, you got people like Capote and all.
Room full of smoke.
Yeah, they're all like, But they knew that they were flawed, right? They knew as human beings that they were broken. And what they would do is they would write roles where a broken person has to overcome something.
Yeah.
What is happening now?
Old Man and the Sea.
Yeah.
Anything by Hemingway.
Anything. The classic example, Byron, all the writers that had these complex, which we all are, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're these complex lives. They would channel that. And as a comedian, like you look at someone like Robin Williams, and he had a intense sadness about him. Like, you knew he could go there. That's why the great comedians make terrific dramatic actors, right? They have
there's something to tap into.
There's something there.
You're not fishing in a swimming pool, is what I say. There's something to grab a hold of.
Yeah, and you can see it with the greats, right? What you're seeing now is the participation generation who are getting, they're being brought in to jobs that they've never earned. They've never found anything hard in their lives. They've been told they're amazing. And they come in, and you can see it reflected in the writing, because they're like, Captain Marvel is God, right? Even if you look at Superman.
Even if you have really jagged up toes.
Even if you have jacked up feet.
Yeah.
But, serious point, Superman could be broken with kryptonite. And if you think of the first movie, he gets kryptonite around him, and he has to overcome that, right? This is someone that people struggle to deal with as a character, because he's so overpowered, right? So Superman is super powered.
To that point, and I don't want to interrupt you too far off of this, but you remember, like, I saw a clip, and I forgot about this because I hadn't seen it. The Christopher Reeves, when there's two Supermen, his personality splits.
Yeah.
He's so depressed and torn up, and then he gets in a fight with himself.
Yeah.
The psychology of what they were saying, even in that corny-ass film, of this flawed individual who still had this bipolar deal that had to face one another. It's like they don't tell those stories anymore.
They don't tell this. There's no struggle. I mean, the reason why I think that Iron Man did so well was you got Robert Downey Jr., who has been to hell and back, right? I mean, I think
literally in his life.
Yes. Yeah, no, he has. I mean, and I think he said you don't go from like the penitentiary or the jail to a $2,000 a night penthouse without like understanding something. Mm-hmm. So you look at the Iron Man, he's flawed. And part of that was the genius of Jon Favreau, not to be confused with the Jon Favreau that is on Twitter, who is a Democratic operative, right?
Huge difference.
Yeah, huge difference. He knew that. And Favreau is a real artist, so he tapped into that broken nature, and Robert Downey tapped into it. And he brings that flawed character, and that's why everybody loves Iron Man, right? Because everyone's like, I
can relate to that guy.
I can relate to him. Like, even when he says, is it cool to take a picture with you? And he goes, yes, it is cool. And I'm like, it's just great, right? You just love it. You're not like he's an arrogant asshole. But my point is you've got to a point where these people can never, ever, ever look at themselves and say, I have flaws. Right? They don't say it. They don't say it as people. They don't say it as writers. So I always say when I write about what you know, right? As a screenwriter, I write about what I know. What do I know? I know about, you can take those kind of scenarios and those personality traits and map them onto other things to make them real, right? So what do I know? I know overcoming adversity, insecurity, growing up poor, coming to, all these different things, these elements that make you who you are. I think that one of the most important things is you recognize those flaws within yourselves. And as Christians, right, we know that keenly. And so when you look at someone like Brie Larson in Captain Marvel, she has no flaws. She's a Mary Sue. She's got nothing to overcome. Rey in Star Wars, massively powerful immediately, nothing to conquer, nothing to no growth. There's no growth.
Basically, she discovers her powers through this self-actualization and a little bit of sadness. But beyond that, it just pops out one day.
There's no like Dark Night of the Soul with them. There's no moment where you think all is lost. It's not like when you look at Jaws and you have Brody, who's this guy that doesn't want to get out there, he hates the water. He has this issue. He knows he's got to do something. He's fighting against, there's all these things going on. And he has the complexity of his wife who's saying, what are you doing? You know, the mom that slaps him around. There's all these elements in those movies, in the classic movies, that we've just lost.
So to that point, when I took drama classes at the University of Georgia, one of the things that they talked about then, and I don't know that they're still doing that in the drama department at the University of Georgia, but they talked about when you're looking at a film, look for the gospel. Like, who is the Christ character? Where is the sacrifice being made? What is the juxtaposition of the characters in terms of, and basically they said, you can't improve on the story of the gospel. So everything in some form or fashion has to be a telling of that story. They've since avoided that because, like you're saying, there's no conflict of the soul, there's no travail, there's no brokenness of character, there's no sacrifice. Robert Downey Jr., ultimately, the end of all of these gazillion movies they make, Iron Man gives himself, he dies, sacrifices him for everybody else. And so, you know, they at least capitalized on that element in that place.
Well, yeah, I think that instinctively we know it. I think it's written on our hearts, like instinctive. That's why we recognize it. That's why I think that all throughout history, man has understood that it needs to worship something. Now we're worshiping ourselves, which is probably, it is the worst thing ever to worship.
Yeah, it's the essence of humanism. It's the ultimate essence of humanism.
Yeah, so the stories resonate, and if you go back, and it's not that, it's funny because some people say, well, you know, obviously the story of Christ was created like that, right? Well, no, we recognize that because it's a truth within us, and it is truth. It's happened, but like you said, you know, the dark night of the soul, you know, when Jesus is in the garden, you know, take this cross from me, you know, take it from me. And then he goes, he dies, and then there's the resurrection. So every single movie is based on that.
Yeah.
In one way, shape, or form.
Well, and every story in the Bible, in the Old Testament, is a prediction of the Christ story in a little bit more shrouded form. You know, there's symbolism and allegory throughout that you can see the sacrifice and the thing being played out. So ultimately, the gospel was the fulfillment of all of those stories. Yeah, you know, just found in Christ. So I don't know. I think that we've lost a huge element in the entertainment industry. You know, and listen, I'm a movie buff. I love good films. I love actors. I love the stories. Like I love it when you and I are together because we talk about just really things that I find are really, really cool about that world. I did what I could to try to break into that world. It wasn't for me to do in the sense that I was out there pitching sitcoms. We were out there. I met Stallone on the Fox studio lot, and you know we're having a little after meeting, and he comes walking by, his little Stallone, how he does his little deal. Yeah, and I get out there. We're pitching a thing, and I can see him changing the sets for the Navy SEALs, that series that I don't know if it's still on or not, but it was for a long time. And I like this. The whole world fascinates me. You know, to this day, we go over to the Blaze, and that's the old Paramount Studios, and we talk about. I love giving people a tour of that building and talk about what they did in this building, and they filmed Barney here and Dynasty and RoboCop and all these different things that were done here. You go through and you see Glenn Beck's collection of Hollywood crap that he's got in his museum. And I'm like fascinated by this stuff because it takes us to a world where not only we escape, but it taps into the emotions and it shapes so much of how you see the rest of the world. They're not doing that anymore. Now they're trying to shape it a whole different way. Well, you found out the hard way because they said, listen, you can be on top as long as you're willing to play the game. Yeah. The experimental medical procedure came along. Yeah. And you said, I'm not down with that. Yeah. And they were like, okay. Screw you, screw your dreams, you're out of Hollywood. Yeah, it's funny because you'd think that they look at people who they claim to be tolerant, number one, and they also claim to be, independent thinkers, and they're actually not. I think that's part of the problem. But if you look at the entire human history,
people say that the oldest profession in the world is a prostitute, right?
Yeah,
Well, actually,
yeah.
But actually, the oldest profession in the world is a storyteller.
Yeah.
Because it's been going on for however long. You look at the cave paintings and everything. That man has always tried to express story in one way, shape, or form because it does unite us. It really does unite us. It gives us this like kind of commonality. And I find this when I'm at parties, people always end up talking about TV or movies. They always do one, or it used to be music, right? When we used to all sit and wait for the chart show to come on a Sunday night or whenever it was over here. But I think that we still need that. We need story. People will say, oh, movies are, who cares? I'm like, well, you should really care.
I agree. You should.
You should care.
That's like saying, who cares about these cave drawings? Who cares about these hieroglyphics? They spend fortunes to keep that stuff in repair so it can tell the stories throughout the generations of, hey, there were people before us telling stories. Those stories matter. And we might not know exactly what those stories mean, but we know that people were there telling them. I mean, whether it's the Dead Sea Scrolls or some ancient manuscript from Alexandria, Egypt, or whatever. We do everything to preserve all this stuff, but yet we take for granted this medium that's in front of us right now in the form of film.
And one of the things that upsets me the most, actually, is especially when conservatives poo-hoo it, right?
And they do
that all the time. And I'll say to them, they always go back and they'll go, "What about Braveheart? What about The Passion?" And I'm like, okay. Those now, The Passion is 24 years old, right? I think it was around 2000.
That's crazy.
24 years old. Braveheart was like 1993, maybe, or maybe 97. Mel was about 30 when he made that.
Mel was still
crazy.
a good-looking dude.
He's still good looking now.
Come on,
I mean, no, he is. He's still, and he's a genius director. But Stallone turned around to me. We were doing. I was on Rambo, and we were going down the river. And he turns around to me before a take, right? And he goes, "Remember, this is forever." And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and he's right. It is forever. Like, I will be forever schoolboy at that moment in time. And it's going to outlive me. It's going to outlive my kids. It's going to outlive my grandkids. At one point, they'll be able to go, oh, look, there's my great-great-great-grandfather. If the zombie apocalypse hasn't come at that point.
They're working on it.
They are working on it. But if you opened a time capsule in 30 years' time and you put a sample of the movies over the past, let's even say 20 years, what would that say about society? What would people then think about the way we lived our lives? It wouldn't be an accurate representation. Certainly wouldn't be an accurate representation of Texas. I can tell you that right now. I'd say it wouldn't be an accurate representation of anything inside of the seaboards, right? Like, it wouldn't. But they're doing it. And this is what I keep trying to tell people is they don't care whether you watch it right now. It's forever. It is out there forever. The Acolyte is there forever for your kids to be like surfing past Snow White to go, oh, that looks interesting. Boom, gay, space witches. Oh, that's what they did. It is so important that we are involved in this, and we're not. And the funny thing is, they are going to all this woke BS right now. There are literally thousands of scripts that could be made tomorrow that are amazing. They're written by all these writers that were really prolific in putting out this material. And you could literally make this right now. But for some reason, conservatives, and this is part of the issue I think that we have, and we've spoken about this before, is that conservatives are really, really hung up on this, like, it's rugged individuals, like we're rugged individuals. I'm like, yeah, but when you go to war, you're not a rugged individual, right? You're a team, because you have to be a team, right? You have to come together. We know this. We've spoken about this. Like, if someone decides they're going to go after Chad on something, you'll be damn right that I'm going to have his back, right? But we still have this like fracturing because there's not a true understanding of what is needed to win. When they went in on D-Day, they didn't go, hey, listen, let's send guys in one at a time.
Right.
No, they're like, okay, we've all got to come in. We're going to be bombing over here. We're going to be doing this. You have to come together. And so I think part of that is conservatives not really being eloquent enough in the way that they communicate the way that we should work together and how that we should interact, right? Because if it was all about rugged individualism, why go to church at all?
Right. And I see people, and I know you have, people say, well, Hollywood can go to hell. We don't care about Hollywood. Okay, fine, let Hollywood go to hell. But are you really going to take something that has influenced culture for so long now and just say, yeah, we're just going to toss that out too? Or you could take it and actually redeem it and say, we're going to take this tool and use it for ourselves in our own messaging. Now, we see a lot of these production houses out there that are making the faith-based movies and something that might have an independent conservative message at the end of it, or God did this or God did that. And there's a place for all of that stuff. But I think it could be, and I know you agree with me because we've talked about it, there's a place for real films to be made.
Yeah.
Real films, not this stuff where you go in and you're watching some cameo experience, from a cameo thing from a reality show guy who happens to be a Christian in real life. And everybody's like, oh, see, there's Duck Dynasty in the thing. And I'm not knocking them. There's a place for that. But it's like, I think there's something beyond that can be done. Nobody wants to invest in that.
Yeah.
It's like I keep saying where everybody says Jesus is going to come back and get us out of all this mess. Maybe, but you can't do business while you're trying to go out of business. So why are we taking all of these mediums that could be so effective, and you say, I don't need Hollywood's permission to go out there and make a really good film? Now, they're not going to distribute it the way that, but we've seen from these faith-based movie houses, production houses, that when the thing takes off and boom, you make a $3 million movie and the thing grosses $80 million. You didn't need Hollywood.
Well, then, and everyone goes, oh, that was such a surprise. I'm like, no, it's not. It's actually not. It's called show business. If you do something really well and tell a good story, it's like when Top Gun Maverick came out, right? I loved that. I went to the theater twice to see it. I took my kids to see it. And I mean, apart from there's a couple of things in there that maybe, they didn't necessarily have to do. It wasn't really egregious, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's like watching Beverly Hills Cop the other night. I couldn't let my kids watch it. There's a couple of things that, it goes, hey, are you having intercourse? Or whatever it is he says. And I'm like, okay, I can't show my kid. But for the most part, it was great. And look, I've always thought that the Oscars were ridiculous because when I was fortunate enough to be in the second Transformers movie, I loved the first Transformers movie. I thought it was great popcorn. I think it did everything that it needed to do. And there's a role for that. There's a role for that kind of movie. There's a role where we should be able to go and have a laugh and have a good time and watch these films. I remember when they did like Parenthood and Cheaper by the Dozen, all these movies that were just fun.
Yeah.
They were just fun. There wasn't any massive overarching message, but you could go there in, your life, the majority of people right now are struggling to cope with inflation. It looks like we're going to go towards World War III with these maniacs that are in control. Sometimes people just want to go, I want to put my brain into neutral. And this is the big argument about keeping politics out of sports, right? Because I just want to watch a game of football. I don't want to be lectured about how I'm a bad white guy, right? Can we just play football, please? Same thing with movies. But there is also a place to make great films that really do move you, that really do say something. And that doesn't have to be Christian. Right now, it's a massive win if you show a dad that isn't an idiot. I literally, Chad, I don't know if I told you this, I got this film. It's a really, really great film. And again, I'm a filmmaker that is Christian.
And let me add a disclaimer on that, because you have a track record as a writer, as a filmmaker. Yeah. You have made several films. I just recently rewatched your film, I Am That Man,
right,
which is great, about a guy who's struggling in life and he's, dealing with these. You need to watch the movie.
Yeah.
And so it's a great film. And but I want to say, this is coming, when you say these things, this is coming from a person who's not just, in the ethereal saying, we could go out and make movies. You've made movies.
Yeah.
Not only been in them, but you've made them. So this is real talk.
Yeah, and I want to be. I've always been very mindful of, because when you're in LA, you go, "Oh, I'm a producer." I'm like, "Okay, well, which Starbucks do you work at?" Yeah. Right? Or I'm a writer. I'm like, "Which coffee bean do you work at?" Because everyone's a producer, everyone's a writer, and for me, it was through necessity that I had to take on those roles, because in an ideal world, I would just be an actor. But I do have the training in writing, and like I said, I am that man. I went out and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what every other conservative group says they're going to do. And I hired conservatives to come in on the film. I did it for a very low budget, and it's got 5.4 million views right now on YouTube. If I was a lefty, my door would be knocked down with offers right now. But I think that there's a way of creating these great stories. And to my point, I'd got this screenplay that I took, and the place will remain nameless. And anyone listening to this, especially any dad listening to this will really resonate. I've got this script, it's great. It's a really, really good script. And I'm a script snob, right? It's a good script. And the production company who's going to fund it, they read it, they go, it's a great script. Okay. So I have a meeting with a development executive, and he goes, and he's like, 30 years old. And he goes, Matt, we love the script, but we think that the kid should teach the dad a lesson. And I went, I'm not making this movie if that's what you want to do. And he went, what? And I went, you don't know your own audience. That is the last thing that we need to hear. The kids know everything. That is what Disney has been doing for 20 years to undermine the nuclear family. I'm not doing it. Because the problem, when you're in that situation and you're a filmmaker and you're that close to getting the money, right? You're that close, and you've worked all this time, you've built the script, you've got everything. It's easy to say, okay, I'll do it. But you can't. But that's why we have substandard movies, because people work all up to that point and they're like, do I really not want to get paid for the year, or do I really want to not get the movie going? Because that people look and they'll say, well, it's like what happens with me. People say, well, what did you do last? This is why the left they're so insidious about what they do with actors that come out, or any kind of entertainer that comes out, that comes out and says they're conservative. The phone just stops ringing. And so all of a sudden you lose heat. And so people go, well, what have you done recently? I'm like, well, I opened my mouth, right? That's what I did. And then I stopped getting work. So the problem is, if you don't have heat when you go into that meeting, right, you can't say, well, I just did a movie last month, or I just did, because you've seen it on X. Like, what did you do recently? Well, I just did a movie, and you might want to go see it. It shuts them up. But that is their way of shutting you down, right? One of the many ways of shutting you down. So I understand why a lot of people do that when they're pitching a film, but I won't do that. And that's difficult because you don't get movies made. But it's better that than me having to explain to people why I didn't stick to my morals.
Well, why would you sacrifice as much as you've sacrificed? And you've sacrificed a lot. I mean, you moved across the pond. You go to California. You're in the biggest stuff. You got the heat, to use your term. And then, again, they come out with the whole nonsense with the pandemic. You said, I'm not going to do that. You're booted out. You open your mouth. You said some things. You're booted out. Now there's news stories about how Matt Marsden's lost his damn mind, and he's one of these crazy, kooky, probably thinks the frogs are gay conservatives. And frogs are gay, by the way. And so now you come to Texas, come to a land of freedom, and you're like, hey, listen, I still have this passion and desire inside of me. I've sacrificed all this, I've given all of this stuff up. Why am I going to go to a 30-year-old producer and then have him take my messaging, which I've lost everything for my convictions, and you're going to make that one little twist that's going to be, that just nullifies everything I've sacrificed for.
Yeah, you can't do it, which is, if you have any kind of morals you can't
Moral
do
code
it.
or conscience.
And the other difficulty that you find is when you start talking to people, and this happened when I very first came to Texas. I met some guys out here super, super talented. And they're like, nobody will look at us for production because we're not in LA.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the same people, conservatives that are out there fighting the culture war, will give their money to woke advertising agencies and people that hate them, right? Because it's what you do. They're not willing to go and hire someone that's a local. It's staggering to me. There is, and so I get people come up to me. I'm sure you get like, Chad, how do I get into stand-up, right? How do I do this? How do I do that?
That, or how do I get into podcasting, or how do I build this following? How do I do whatever
we're not supporting these youngsters that are coming up. There's no, because you do get to a point where, unfortunately, and I know we're like, for me, I try not to think about it. Then I realize that actually the stuff that I did was 25 years ago, which is quarter of a century ago. And you're like, oh, but then it's incumbent on us to build for the next generation. And what can we give them? We don't have the infrastructure. Nobody's been funding us. It's like people say, well, what about this person? What about that person? The big money earners, talking about the really big money earners, like certain actors that sold their house for $140 million, they're still playing the game. They're not setting up anything for anyone else, right? So, and you'll go to, and I've done this, I've been to very high net worth individuals, and they're so pure. If you have just one little thing that's, they're like, no, we can't fund that. I'm like, you're not building for the next generation. You have to help us build for the next generation. Otherwise, there's nobody coming up. Think about this. And this is what Hollywood has done this to a degree. And I'm going to ask the guys in the room as well, because there's other guys here. Name me an actor, a conservative actor under 30.
I've gotten to the point in life where I don't even know people's ages anymore, but I'd be hard-pressed to do it.
Or even under 40.
Yeah. I don't know how old Chris Pratt is, but even he's caught.
Go and look. How old's Chris Pratt?
Probably over 40. He's over 40. And Chris has caught hell for, I'm not sure if Chris knows where he stands on anything.
Well,
anymore,
Chris, they went
does
straight after him. And don't forget, here's the thing, because people go, how old? 45.
Yeah.
45. You could not list a conservative actor under the age of 45. Think about that. That's insane. That has never happened. If you look at the 80s, or the big three, Stallone, well, you could argue that Schwarzenegger, because, and Bruce, all three of them conservative, all three of them loved America, even Costner to a degree. The guys that could greenlight movies were on the team. And they made great films. Clint. And don't tell me, because people are like, we don't care about Hollywood. Yeah. Who are the GOP inviting to their Amber Rose? Really? That's what, Clint's coming. Clint, listen, there's nobody loves Clint Eastwood more than me. Mm-hmm. He's 88.
1,000. Yeah.
Right?
He's 90 years old.
Don't tell me you don't care, because if there was if Timothy Chalamet came out tomorrow and said, I'm for Donald Trump, everyone would lose their minds.
There wouldn't be a Dune 3.
Well, that's true. That is true. But but you see what I'm saying? And here's the other thing. For people that don't understand this, you know this, but I'm going to give it to people that don't understand it. Hollywood spends $3 billion a year, $3 billion a year on marketing films. $3 billion. If you have an actor that is in one of those movies, right? Let's just say, we can talk about a Brie Larson, a Robert Downey Jr. How much publicity is behind that? How much publicity is behind however many movies they made with, let's say, Robert Downey Jr.? If Robert Downey Jr. came out tomorrow and said, I'm running for president, it's over. It's over. He's going to win.
Yeah.
Nobody could compete.
Rock,
he's the
Dwayne
one.
Johnson, yeah.
He's the one that, and I keep telling people, he kind of shot himself in the foot when he backed Biden in the last one.
Yeah.
If he runs, it's over. If
And the fact that he did damage control in his XFL interview and said, "Yeah, I can't. I'm not doing that again." That was damage control. That was political damage control for him.
He's going to run.
Of course he is. Absolutely.
And McConaughey will eventually as well.
Of course he will.
And everyone, all the guys McConaughey will run for governor of Texas, right? And everyone's like, oh, well, I'm like, you cannot compete with that. You can spend $100 million. You can't compete with that. What you should be doing is taking $100 million, giving it to someone like me and say, okay, make 10 $1 million so 10 $10 million movies over 10 years. Put the same actor in it, and I will give you the next president of the United States. When Trump came along, when he announced, I told my buddy Matt Marsden, I was like, he's going to win. And everyone's like, no. I'm like, dude, 17 years on a top television show. You can't compete with that.
I could tell you a fact. So getting elected is all about name recognition. It's, the money and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, they're paying all that money for name recognition. That's why you see the signs, the billboards, the whole thing. Donald Trump, when he ran for president, he had a 90% name recognition in the U.S. Now, you and I could say, I can't believe there were 10% of the population that did not know who Donald Trump was. But 90%, that is unheard of in terms of how high that is for a person running for office at that level. You would think, 100% of the people in the world. Well, they might now, because now Donald Trump is the most famous living person on the globe. But then, no, he was a real estate mogul, been bankrupt a couple of times, banged a few, whatever.
Yeah.
And was the host of The Apprentice. 90% name recognition. But the 90% name recognition was huge for what he did.
It mattered. And a lot of people they do forget that they loved him on the shows, right? I remember watching him on the shows, and everyone's like, he's a Democrat, until he started becoming a threat. Mm-hmm. And those of us in the industry understand the power of fame. And again, where conservatives have it wrong is they think that good ideas are going to win, right? If good ideas won, how would AOC be anywhere near or any the Congress?
Any of them.
Here's the thing with her. She's a moron, but she's a star. People don't want to admit it. That's why you look at someone like Anna Paulina, right?
Anna Paulina Luna,
right? Who is gorgeous and smart, but she's a star, right? She's a future star. Gavin Newsom is the worst politician on the face of the planet in terms of what he's done in California. He's literally driven that. I'm a classic example of it. I got out there. He's driven that state into the ground. It's probably the most beautiful state in the union. It's got everything going for it. He's done. But his name is still in the conversation, right? Because he's a star. Mm-hmm. And the Democrats understand that. Now, you might not like him. He might be like a villain, like Alan Rickman in Die Hard. He might be a villain or Voldemort, but he's a star. And we don't understand that. And it's really frustrating because I'll see billionaires put $100 million into a Senate race and lose it with someone like bloody Dr. Oz.
And you know what else? That doesn't live forever. What Sly says to you on a boat in Thailand is, hey, this only be forever. Encapsulating something in film or in a book or whatever, the way you tell that story, that's going to live forever. Dr. Oz's campaign doesn't live forever. It's gone. It's done. No. You piss that money away.
It's staggering to me.
And didn't change culture one bit.
No, I'll give an example. How many people watch It's a Wonderful Life every Christmas?
Of course.
It's forever. It doesn't matter that it was made whenever it was made. He's always that person. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's always that person. You can always. It doesn't matter. It's black. It's black and white, right? It doesn't matter because you relate to it. It's forever.
And everybody can relate to George Bailey. Everybody can relate to that character.
And because it was made, and even though filming techniques have changed and acting techniques have changed, and that was a moment where, what's his name? What is his name who plays the lead?
Jimmy
Stewart had just done 52 tours over in bombers bombing Germany. He came back with all this, baggage and goes off and does that movie and delivers one of the greatest performances of all time.
Yeah.
Right. With a director that he was basically his muse, right? He was basically his muse and delivered something forever. And we're not doing that right now. We can. We
need
can
money.
do it.
Matt Marsden needs money.
I do need money.
Need money.
But it's show business. You get a return on it if it's done well.
Yeah.
But people look at these substandard movies.
Matt Marsden and I need money.
Yeah.
I'm here to carry his bags and make some coffee and some. The Brits like tea and biscuits about 2 p.m.
Yeah, biscuits. The biscuits. It's a cookie.
It's a cookie.
Yeah,
it's a cookie.
It's a cookie. Do you know I get into a lot of trouble by saying soccer?
Yeah, I can imagine. You haven't been here long enough to figure that out.
Well, the Brits hate it when I say soccer. Yet they invented the word soccer. It's a weird thing. I do want to say something though. I will never be cool with people slapping each other's ass on the football field. I do not understand that. Well, I've never understood. I'm like, slap. I'm like, what is going on there? You guys, I say you guys because I'm an American now, but I'm not adverse. Well, maybe I am now to someone when I did Black Hawk Down. It's a funny story. We're out in Morocco.
As a baseball player, let me go on record as saying I've smacked a lot of ass.
I'm sure you have.
I've had a lot of asses smack my ass too. But anyway.
So when I'm doing Black Hawk Down, it's like heat in Texas, right? And you have to wear sun cream, suntan lotion. And I'm at the pool, and I turn around to one of the American guys there. I went, "Will you just put some sun lotion on my back?" They were like, "No." And I was like, "Why not?" And they're like, "That's super gay." I'm like, "Just put it on my shirt." No. Go and find a girl to do it. This is straight up. Straight up, they said that to me. And that was funny. I found that the first... And then, so there's little idiosyncrasies that I found out, right? Like doing the film, like dudes won't do that. So I had to go and find a French. I had to go and find a Frenchman or something like that.
Find a Frenchman.
In a Speedo.
In the UK, y'all do that gay shit.
Well, there's no sun in the UK, so we don't really get to do it.
There's no dentists. It's overcast, and there's freckles.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Like the Aussies in the room will know this. Like, they have these monitors that go around. You know this. They go around on the beach and they'll go up and go, "Excuse me, mate. Like you're looking a little bit like red. You might want to turn over, right?" And Brits there go, "No, thank you. We're doing just fine." It's like sticking your hand in a toaster. That's the way that Brits look at it. Like, don't be telling me.
Yeah.
But that was one of the strange things.
You couldn't find a man to rub you down.
I couldn't.
They don't make films like Brokeback Mountain anymore.
No.
It was a good film.
I know. I lament sometimes that I never got my shot.
I believe it. You and Gyllenhaal. I'd make out with Gyllenhaal. I don't know about Ledger, but
I have a story about him that I can't say.
Ledger?
No, Gyllenhaal. But I did an audition with him once. I was testing for something with him, but I mean, he's what was that? I like him in. He did. Is it Nightcrawler? Not Nightcrawler. Is it called Nightcrawler?
Nightcrawler, where he goes out and takes the pictures.
He's really good in that.
Yeah, chases the.
And do you know what movie I love as well? Now I watched it on the plane the other day. Every time it comes on, I watch it. Is Zodiac.
Yeah,
that's a really good film.
It's a good film.
Apart from it's got Mark Ruffalo in, and I want to just.
Don't you want to smack that dude?
Oh, dude. Why are they so... This is what I don't understand, right? So,
like we were talking about the Hulk earlier. I hate that people, when they think of the Hulk character, they think of Ruffalo.
Here's the thing that I don't understand, is that, and you know this about comedy. Comedy, the essence of comedy is pointing at the truth.
Right.
Right? The best comedy is pointing at the truth.
Right.
And as an actor, when you look at a screenplay, this is why... These movies are so flawed, is because the way I look at a screenplay is it's like a treasure map that you're going to follow, right? And why does a why did the writer say, like, you know, at this point, the guy picks up and takes a drink, puts it down. Why is he saying that? There's a reason for that, right? And so when you are searching for, you should be searching for the truth in the character and the story, right? That's why you hear like, no, my character wouldn't do that, you know, in the movies. My character wouldn't do that. You're trying to find the truth in it. So if you are trying to find the truth, how can you be liberal? I don't understand it, because it's by definition it's illogical. They take illogical stances on things, and he is a good actor. So I don't understand how he could be so illogical about certain things.
Yeah, and they are.
They're really illogical. I mean, you call them out on it, and then, you know, you're a racist, bigot, homophobe, transphobe.
Yeah,
whatever
they
it is.
really do kick knowledge and wisdom right on down the road.
It's weird though, because
No
they
thinking.
should be critical thinkers, and I just think that, you know, it is that kind of, as an actor, you do have to tap into your emotions, but it shouldn't rule you.
Yeah. So like that's the thing that frustrated me through the pandemic, when you had all these rock stars and country music people, you know, the middle finger to the establishment and rage against the machine and the F the man and all that. And these were the guys who were the biggest ones pandering
Such
towards,
frauds, dude. They're such frauds.
The big pharma, big medical, the whole industrial complex. Yeah. But the actors the same way. It's because these are insecure little pinhead shits who have been told their whole life how special they are, and they're afraid that they're going to get taken off the tit and nobody's going to have the fanfare for them anymore, and they're willing to say whatever the hell because they've never had an original thought in their damn mind.
Well, Jim, I have a theory.
And the ones who have, they stay to keep their career going. Even if they do have the same values that you and I have, they just stay shut up. They don't say
stay
anything.
quiet. I've had guys, and it's kind of disappointing, because I had guys email me and message me and go, Matt, you know, it's awesome what you're doing with, you know, the thing, you know, standing up against the thing. And they were like, yeah, you know, that's awesome. Yeah, well done. And I'm like, you could do it yourself at any point as well. But they stayed on their $100,000 an episode gigs. And I haven't had one call from any of them to say, hey, Matt, come on my show. Not one. But I have a theory about why actors are like the way they are.
What is it?
Okay. So remember I told you that I worked my way up through the system. So the good thing about the United States, and the bad thing, is that you can literally be walking down the street and someone go, I'm going to put you in this film. I mean, it used to happen a lot. You know, I mean, if you look at, say, like Tom Cruise, when he was like a second role in Taps, and then someone got sick, and then they were like, you're in. And then he became a giant star, right? Because he took his chance. That's kind of a bad example, but there are examples of when people have just said, you look
listen,
right.
My friend Donna Derrico, who was Playmate of the Year, she married Nikki Sixx, who was the lead singer of Motley Crue. And she's, 55 years old, still a gorgeous model. I mean, she took her clothes off and became very famous in Playboy magazine. They found her in a grocery store, just shopping one night, because one of the talent people from Playboy
it does
just ran
happen.
into her in aisle 7.
It does happen. I mean, back in the day, I got stopped like a couple of times when I was in Hollywood. And you think, well, there's so many people in Hollywood, and they stopped me and my wife. But it does happen. So, okay, let's say there's me and you, and we are equally as talented. We're both working at Starbucks, right? And one day you go out and someone goes, you're the guy. Like, you're the guy. I know, you got to come and do this, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to come and do this, if you know what I'm saying, to get this role. Now, I'm not saying that happens with every one of them.
Sure.
But even if you don't have to compromise your morals, let's just say they say, hey, you got your shot, like, and then all of a sudden you're in a movie and it just blows up and you are the biggest thing. You know that was either a chance meeting, it was just, you didn't earn it, right? It wasn't like, you're a boxer and you fight your way up.
Yeah, you got an imposter syndrome. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
You don't want to be exposed.
That's exactly right. So all of a sudden, I'm looking at you and I'm like, if I would have gone out that time, that would have been me, right? Now you know that there's no difference between me and you, but I'm still working at Starbucks and you're making $5 million a movie.
Mm-hmm.
How does that affect you? Well, you have that imposter syndrome and you're kind of like, well, I need to like help the little guy in your brain, whatever that little guy is. And it tends to be like, because they don't realize they're being racist, it tends to be like black people or, whatever, like oppressed people that they, in their little like minds, whereas we're like, well, no, listen, I'll work my way up and I know that guy can work his way up as well. So I don't feel bad. And I don't think affirmative action should be a thing because I don't think they're less than me. Right? Well, they're there and they're making all this money. Some of them have compromised. They have. Some of them haven't, but they just kind of fell into it. And I think they feel guilty about it.
Coupled with another piece of their psyche, and that is there's nobody who is from LA. These days there's next generations of that industry. The kids have come along. But nobody's from LA, so it's the land of misfit toys. They all left Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, New York, where they all went to LA, and they all were misfits together. And some of them found their way, some of them got noticed, some of them got picked up, others are tending bar. And so all those people, when they finally make it, I think you couple that with this idea that I made it now, I've got to look at this world with a social justice warrior mentality, and this is because I didn't deserve any of this. And I didn't belong, and I finally found a community in which they made me feel like I belonged, and how can I betray it?
And when we go out to our little parties, because we can't go out and meet anybody else because we're super, super famous and we can't fraternize with anyone else. It's a bit of a nightmare. So you end up going to these little cliques and then everyone's thinking the same because they all have the same situation going on in their lives. So they kind of reinforce it and they really can't see it.
Yeah.
And so I think...
Then you toss pedos in the middle of it.
Then you toss all the
nonsense,
weirdness,
and the trash, the human trafficking, and the
and again, the
drugs, and
not even going to go down the Harvey Weinstein route, but when that came out, everyone. I was like, you guys you got to be kidding. Everybody knew.
Everybody knew. All right, we got to go. Send money to Matt Marsden because he's going to put me in his movie.
Mm-hmm. Play your cards right, if you know what I'm saying.
I know.
Casting couch.
You got to do that thing. I already have imposter syndrome. I might as well have the movie too. You need to follow him on X. He's pretty provocative there. What is your handle on there? At Matthew Marsden?
At Matthew D. Marsden.
Marsden.
Here's the thing. You know me, dude. We are just who we are, right?
Sure.
We're just who we are. And I think there's a lot of people that aren't. And I think I actually said it today, there's a lot of people that just go out and they just want clicks and they just want engagement. I'm not interested in that at all.
Are you eating okay? Are you starving to death? You got 400 kids. You made enough movies.
And I've got a dog now.
Movie money, and you got a dog. You feed the dog.
Got a dog.
You need anything, I'll give you $5. I know it's rough. That's rough out there.
Yeah, throw me a bone, literally. That'd be good.
You need the bone. You put me in that movie, I'll throw you more than a bone. Hey. I want you to look at that camera. Which one are we using over here? I want you to look at that camera. I want you to do me a favor. For some of the people one particular lady who has held on through this entire conversation, I want you to look at that camera and I want you to tell Linda Adams that you love her. I want you to, in a sultry way, I want you to tell her.
I can't do sultry.
Just say,
but
tell her sincerely.
Linda Adams, I love you.
And is that scene. That was solid. I love Linda. Linda's probably been to 50 or 60 of my live shows. She's awesome. She's a part of the audience and everything. She's a good friend, and she lives near me down there north of Houston. And I know she loves you. I know she loves Jakub Williams. I think she loves me, is evidenced by the fact that she comes to a lot of shows.
That's great.
And I love Linda. I didn't know she had a thing for you until somebody else kind of whispered in my ear. So, Linda, if you don't like Matt, pretend. Just pretend.
Please pretend. Please. I have imposter syndrome, so please pretend.
But no, I'm serious. It's going to happen. Listen, back to that point, I'm going to shut up, I promise you. I've been saying on my show for a while now, Every generation has to have a revelation of God, or else they lose everything.
Yeah.
And that's in every part of our culture. So even the film industry needs to have a revelation. God is a generational God. We can't say, oh, I worship the God of my grandfather. You know, he's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. He reveals himself to each generation. You got to embrace that. I think it's got to happen in music. It's got to happen in film. It's got to happen in where say, hey, we're going to take the mediums that are available to us, even social media, whatever. Take those mediums, and we're going to make something of a lasting impact. I think.
Yeah, and I think that, and again, I know we're probably going over, but I think that what it takes is for that one person to do it the right way, because there's a lot of people that aren't doing it the right way, and like once the person does it the right way, which is a level of quality, also the way that you treat people, giving people a return on investment, giving them value, all those things. And being independent enough to say, hey, listen, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to make, because as a filmmaker, you have to be a benevolent dictator, right? That's what we say. You have to, else you can never get anything done. And that doesn't mean you're not a collaborator, but you have to be a benevolent dictator, else it just becomes wishy-washy and the message gets lost. So I think that when someone actually does that and you start seeing a hit, and it might not be the first one to hit, it might be like the third one or the fourth one, and you start building the steam. This is the way it used to be, and people will reflect back. It's kind of like when you get, it used to be, you'd listen to a hit song from someone on the radio, and then you go, well, actually, they released 2 songs before that, but you missed it, and then you're going back and you're listening to the album, and you're like, okay, I get it. It has to be a long-term project because we're kind of fixated on the quick fix right now.
Right.
And that it just doesn't work. And we're seeing this. We have to have I'd say a 100-year plan, like eventually, but right now it'd take a 10-year plan to get us to get back to where we need to be as a country. Yeah. Right. So...
in it for the generations, buddy. All right, Matthew Marsden, thanks for coming in, hanging out. You're my friend. I appreciate you. Love you, pal. And this is twice I've seen you this week over on Sarah's show. And now, let's not make a habit of this, man.
No, let's make a habit of it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, guys, watchchad.com is where you can find me. That's where all the fun stuff is. Find me out on the road, live and in person. Lots of places. Follow Matt on the socials. And, send money. We need millions upon millions. We'll make some films. We won't line the pockets, I promise. It might line yours. It's a good investment.
Yeah.
It's a good investment and done in the right way. Anyway, ratings, reviews, we like it. Share it with your family and friends. Tell all your friends about the Chad Prather Show. And go subscribe to his YouTube as well. You got the podcast thing going on.
I started. It's a little dabble.
Yeah, you're getting in people's face with it. I think it's good, and it's growing. I like it. I like your format. I like what you're doing.
Thank you, man.
And you gotta look at Matt. I mean, you look at his face. You're like, you can't. I'm watching that Reacher series, and there's all of a sudden you show up on the deal in the flashback. I was like, hey, you didn't tell me you were on Reacher?
Yeah, it's funny. I get those texts.
What the hell? All right, buddy. I love you. You guys, stay safe out there. We'll talk to you next time. Love you. God bless you. Bye.